How do you appropriate Fatimiyya? How do you twist the narrative? How do you fix this colossal failure on the part of their khulafa? How do you vindicate them? How do you explain Fatimatu Zahra, the mistress of the women of the world, being dragged into court and being questioned on her integrity and having her status put under question? How do you explain that? How do you explain her right being usurped? How do you explain away her condemnation of the Khilafah system in their court of law and in the presence of all of the Muslims? How do you explain the fact that this sermon, the Fatimiyya sermon, is narrated by their own earliest sources, even before ours? How do you fix that? You can't hijack it, you can't twist it. And so the best strategy is to completely avoid it, not talk about it, because it's just too embarrassing. This particular event is more important than Ghadir and Ashura. Two hallmarks of the identity of a Shia: Ghadir and Ashura. Yet if I were asked to select an event that defines the identity of a Shia, it wouldn't be Ghadir and it wouldn't be Ashura, it would be Fatimiyya. Why? Because Ghadir and Ashura are not exclusive to us. How many non-Muslims have praised Amir al-Mu'mineen and have specifically spoken about the grandeur of Ghadir? Off the top of my head, I can name you a dozen. In particular, Christians who have lived in the Middle East, in particular, societies that are open to one another, countries like Lebanon, Iraq, Iran. So many Christian thinkers, authors, poets, writers, philosophers have praised Ghadir. They've spoken about Ghadir. Sulaiman Kattani has written an entire book about Ghadir. Joseph al-Hashim, Antoine Bara, Sufis of all colors and stripes, Rumi, they have spoken about Ali ibn Abi Talib. They have praised Amir al-Mu'mineen. As for Ashura, the same is true. How many Christians, how many Zoroastrians, how many Jews, how many Hindus and Sikhs have been inspired by Imam Hussein? They remember and commemorate Imam al-Hussein. But when it comes to Fatimiyya, there's a sense of how it defines our identity. It sets us apart. Fatimiyya cannot be appropriated, as I was saying to a friend earlier today. I have seen Wahhabi sheikhs in one of the Gulf states who recites the maqtal of Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura. He literally sits on the pulpit and recites the maqtal and sobs and weeps and cries and makes everybody cry. He is not a Shia by any stretch of the imagination. He's a Wahhabi. But there is this idea that we need to appropriate Ashura. That the Shia have used Ashura to paint certain personalities, in particular Yazid ibn Muawiyah alayhi la'inullah, in a negative manner. And so we need to reclaim Hussein. We need to reclaim the event of Ashura, but we would change it, twist it, manipulate it, and omit the involvement of Yazid. In other words, when you listen to their eulogizing of Imam al-Hussein, you'll hear them talking about the foot soldiers and their role in the massacre of Karbala. They'll mention the likes of Shamr ibn al-Jawshan, they'll mention the likes of Shabath ibn Rab'i, they'll mention the likes of Sinan ibn Anas, they'll mention these foot soldiers and commanders in the army of Yazid, but never do you hear a reference to Yazid himself. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, they're happy to throw him under the bus as well. But Yazid is vindicated, and that's the whole point. So they'll try to appropriate Ashura and use it to their nefarious ends. We've seen this, and it's happened for a long time. So either they'll not mention Imam al-Hussein, as one brother was saying who embraced the school of the Ahlul Bayt. As an adult, he said, when I was younger, it's as though Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein never really grew up. They were children with the Holy Prophet. They'd go around with him. They'd sit on his back while he was praying. They would play with him and so forth. But you never hear about what they did when they actually grew up. So it's like they never really grew up. They always stay these adorable little children, right? So either they won't talk about Imam al-Hussein, or if they do, it is to appropriate and hijack the name of Imam al-Hussein, right? The same is true also with the commander of the faithful and the rosy narrative that they've provided. How Ali ibn Abi Talib was on the best of terms even with those who oppressed him, despite the fact that in their own books there are clear references to the opposition of Ali ibn Abi Talib to the Khilafah system. But again, the idea is to hijack and to provide a counter narrative, to provide an alternative, quote unquote, alternative truth, so that they can keep their masses subdued and manipulated. However, they cannot do this with Fatimiyya. How do you appropriate Fatimiyya? How do you twist the narrative? How do you fix this colossal failure on the part of their khulafa? How do you vindicate them? How do you explain Fatimah az-Zahra, the mistress of the women of the world, being dragged into court and being questioned on her integrity and having her status put under question? How do you explain that? How do you explain her right being usurped? How do you explain away her condemnation of the Khilafah system in their court of law and in the presence of all of the Muslims? How do you explain the fact that this sermon, the Fatimiyya sermon, is narrated by their own earliest sources, even before ours? How do you fix that? You can't hijack it. You can't twist it. And so the best strategy is to completely avoid it, not talk about it, because it's just too embarrassing. And the moment you present it to the masses, the moment you actually begin to speak about it, is the moment you've lost your case. You're done. Because if there is even a trace of love to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the fruit of his eye, Fatimah, even a trace of love, genuine, sincere love, you can't help but condemn the enemies of Fatimah, condemn the usurpers of her right. The best thing to do is not talk about her, which is exactly what Bukhari does. The so-called Sahih al-Bukhari has a chapter. He's got a book called the Book of the Virtues and Merits of the Companions. Look at these twisted, maniacal, diabolical methods that they've used. Let's talk about the merits of the companions of Rasulullah. Among the companions, in fact, the very last one is who? Fatimah. Fatimah was just a companion. No big deal. Okay, so what were the virtues of Fatimah? Surely there's a good 50, 60 pages speaking about her virtues. After all, the Prophet did say that she is a part of me. A part of me. So there's bound to be a mountain of references and quotes by the Holy Prophet about the merits of this person who is the only one referred to as a part of Rasulullah. Well, how many pages are there? Have you looked it up? Do you know how many pages there are? Anyone? It's one hadith. One orphan, singular hadith. And it's the one that says, Fatima is a part of me, whoever angers her angers me.